Happened to me again. Happened to me again where I go on and on for a while, and I wasn't even, I haven't even started um, what I'm saying. So at least I know what I'm saying now, unscripted. So what I want to say briefly is that there are a couple things with Genesis that when they talk about sacrifice and circumcision, there's no reason to believe that these are highly metaphorical things with a highly metaphorical meaning. That there is a metaphorical meaning, but that has to do with obscurity of the knowledge lost in history, lost in time. So because it's so long before writing, this history is lost, and circumcision and sacrifice both happen to exist long before the time of Moses. And there's no reason to believe that this is a big metaphor that, as I often have, that sacrifice, is often curious to me. What is the meaning of this? How did Abel, the third person on earth, let's say, have these things true of much later in the Neolithic Revolution, where you have metallurgy, animal husbandry, domestication, that you have also with Cain, you have grain offerings, which would imply some sort of cultivation as well. So how do we all of a sudden jump from Paleolithic to Neolithic so suddenly? And why do we see sacrifice way back then of animals, and Cain, doing, the Adam, the first man, being told to till from the ground as well, all of a sudden jumping to the Neolithic Revolution, all of a sudden in the first man. And why were they sacrificing? Why is this inserted before the law of Moses? And the reason is not to be taken as incredibly metaphorical, that Cain and Abel had to do with something that was favorable or not favorable to God from knowledge, prior knowledge, because it was never told to them to sacrifice an animal. Historically they had deciphered that God desired, this blood sacrifice more than the animal sacrifice, but that people from time immemorial had been offering to God as well as their firstborn. And this is where we get into the term Malik. And Malik is often the term for God's angel, because God wouldn't show his face before Exodus. So in Genesis, you have somebody talking, maybe even in Judges as well, as Elohim Malik. And this is the same root as they would say the king of Salem would be Malachi Zadok, so, or Zadok. So I didn't mean to throw Arabic in there, but so that Hebrew existed from a culture that it was born from, that there was already a people, a culture, and a land in that area that were doing similar things, such as sacrifice and circumcision, and that circumcision predates the law of Moses, and this is proven by archaeology and history and things, that we see that this is not some strictly Israelite custom, or even Abrahamic custom. And we could reckon that one would conclude it was Abrahamic if one thought of Abraham as being this long ago ancestor, that this Abraham is much, much broader than Moses. So that, in terms of the generations and how family trees work and how they expand. And it's true. I mean, throughout Africa and the East, we see circumcision being practiced by myriads of people who are not necessarily descendants of Israel. And So when we see Israel having sacrifice and circumcision, to us, that's antiquated and stuff from yore, and but um, they actually inherited those practices from time immemorial, and uh, that's something that was difficult for me to understand, and now I feel like I understand a little better that there's no reason to read deep metaphorical meaning into the Genesis accounts of sacrifice and circumcision, that this is simply an obscure history that they are suggesting in a metaphorical way, in as much as metaphor can be represented by a personification. Look at the personification of all the sons of Ham. They are all the ites, and the ites were said to be cursed, and the curse is to be fewer, and the blessings were to be multiplied. And so Japheth and Shem were to be multiplied, whereas Ham was to be made smaller. And this has a lot to do with this kind of replacement theology where Semitic and Japhetic people, maybe such as the Hatusa or the Gatisa or the Hatusha, would be Japhetic, and the Mari or the Amorites, like let's say the Akkadians and all them, would be Shemitic. But this is just a history of the replacing of Canaan, of the African people, with northern people. And so when it comes to Hebrew, that Hebrew means to cross over, and that's essentially what the Akkadians did to form all these different states, such as the Mari or the Ugaritic, or so on and so forth. And their language did not really survive because it was eventually wiped out by the Romans in the East through the Mithridatic Wars, and the Romans in the West through the Punic Wars. And the Indo-European languages have largely replaced the Semitic languages, popularized largely by the Phoenicians, and that's where we get the term Punic Wars from. And the Phoenicians that was the dominant culture of the Sea Peoples, and this is where the Philistines come from. And the Philistines, we see something very curious in 1 Samuel 4, because what they won't tell you is this verse 1, Ebenezer, Athak, verse 4, Shiloh, all this mitzvah and all that, this is all in the north, straight up. But they want you to believe that the Palestinians are only from Gaza, that they never had any presence in the north. And this is not true, because we know Tyre and Saddam and all of them were sea peoples, and this is what Ezekiel would talk about in terms of their lavish purples and golds that they would get from. But we know Solomon was getting tribute from him. That's how he built his whole temple with the cedars of Lebanon. And he was believed to inherit David's occupation of the Red Sea through the eastern Gulf of what's now called Aqaba. And although it's hard to pinpoint a place where they could exit Edom, if we believe their view of Edom through the Red Sea, without this port, but I would beg to differ, because I don't think you are going to get apes and monkeys from Tarshish, and I don't think you are going to be able to. What was it in First Chronicles 20 that they said about Etzion? At Zion Gabor was, and that's a funny name, Zion Gabor. But what did they say about it? They said that something just impossible in First Corinthians 20 or Second Corinthians 20. I'll do a video about it some other time, but there's no way they could go around Africa just willy-nilly, in my assessment. But anyways, these Philistines in the north, in 1 Samuel 4, they were defeating the Israelites, and they had destroyed several thousand, and they had brought the ark out, and this was supposed to help them win. And this is what they do now. They often, try to get the Philistines to believe that God's dwelling in their camp or something, and that they can force the hand of God with their wicked priests, and say that God did this, basically bring God to the battlefield and try to force his hand or whatever. And it's not how it works. God's ultimately in control, so you're not going to be able to do that, as evident in 1 Samuel. That they took the presence of God, which was supposed to sit on top of the ark between the cherubim, which are basically the head of a man, wings of an eagle, feet of a lion, or body of a bull or something. And they brought him out, and they still lost. And it's the presence. But the thing is, what's really interesting here is, if you look at verse 7 of 1 Samuel 4, it says, "And the Philistines were afraid, for they said, God is come into the camp. God has come into the camp." So they recognize the power of this God, and they end up possessing it. So obviously they wanted it, and if you look into Zechariah 9:7, it talks about how the blood would be removed from the teeth of the people of Ekron. And so Ekron is named specifically here, of where they put. I'm not sure exactly. I'll have to get back to you on that, but Ekron is where in Zechariah 9:7 it says they will be taken from their mouth. So it's that they were their god Dagon, was another god, as well as, oh, here it is, chapter 5, they talk about Ekron. But it wasn't just that they had the false god, but that what they consumed, that they were supposed to pour that out on the ground, because that was the offering to God. And so, but if you look at chapter 7, it says, or sorry, chapter 4, verse 7, it says, "Woe unto us, for there is not such a thing yesterday and the day before." So the day before is when they won the battle. "Woe unto us," and woe is woe in Hebrew too. And who will deliver us out of the hand of these mighty gods? These mighty gods. So he's talking about Elohim, and they say these mighty gods. Who? So were they not renowned as being monotheist? Was that not known? Even though it was known what happened to the Egyptians, what happened to the Canaanians. I mean, this is after the time of Judges and Joshua and everything. So they say these gods. So well, here's the interesting thing about these. Really, this is where you got to see Hebrew. So you go to Genesis 15:1, and you go to the interlinear and analyze the Hebrew. And this is not a good example, because they throw they throw around they really do throw around the he and the aleph and very guttural vocalizations that make the word longer, such as Bob. It's not a B sound. It's not Bob. And they will insert aleph and Bobs and hairs to make the word longer willy nilly. So verse 15 was not a good example, but when you look at the word these in Hebrew, it's hele. No, sorry, excuse me. Ele. Well, that's Ele is the Canaanite god. It means the. So like in Arabic and Spanish, the word the preposition, the article rather, the is al. And when we discuss the meaning of Allah, it's in Hebrew, it's these, which is a plural form of the, or this rather, this. So we discuss what the is. It's the aforementioned. So that's what a pronoun is. You have something already established, already mentioned. The definition of a pronoun is a word that can function by itself as a noun or phrase. So it's already known what this God is. It's an already known God. And the Philistines are naming him. And that refers either to the participants in this discourse or to someone or something mentioned elsewhere in the discourse. So it's something already mentioned. When you look up the definition of this, plural form these, it says referring to a specific thing, that was, or situation that was just mentioned, that was already being indicated or experienced. So I've already discussed how Hebrew evolved from the Canaanite languages. See Isaiah 18 for further details, verse 19, I believe. Or was it Isaiah 19:18? Pardon me. But you would have to, from this video, as well as your already existing knowledge of the Bible, as well as other things you've heard, see that sacrifice and other cultic practices existed in the nations before there was ever Sinai. The Philistines know who this God is. So this aforementioned God, this already known God that is plural, they said plural, Elohim is plural, but they'll tell you in Hebrew that Elohim is singular and Eloah is plural, that it's an irregular word, like in Spanish, Dios. But I don't think, I don't know the Spanish word for gods, actually. Dioses? I had no idea. I'm not that good at Spanish. I'm pretty good compared to a normal Northern American, but I don't know Spanish. So this God that's going to be the God of the Philistines, like in Zechariah 9:7, when he takes away their practices that he finds repulsive, such as we see the Molech practices were repulsive, Jeremiah 7, Jeremiah 3. But there was a confusion. He had said in Jeremiah 7, never did it cross his mind. So obviously he's trying to explicate some prior understanding that was confused between the nations and the practice of this nation. And so, you know, as it existed, these a lot, all sorry, my olive is terrible. In Arabic, a lot of times it takes on the letter L, whereas in Hebrew, it's kind of a guttural stop. You say oh, I can't even do it. So these uh when you make it plural by adding im to the end, it becomes Elohim. The word from the earliest sources of the Elohist tradition, which I would argue is before the Alloistic tradition, Elohim is a plural form of these. So you can go to Jewish knowledge through Mishnah and all that, and they'll tell you, as well as the other part, the Noahide part, the Muslims, who are the other part of Judaism, because they don't want converts. Hey, how you doing? Hey, good to see you, Faye. Thank you for coming. God bless you. I love you. I can't wait to go to Detroit to see you. I have a cousin in Detroit, so when I'm visiting him sometime, I'll have to come help you with your garden or something. But so with this Elohistic tradition that's a lot older than the Yahwistic tradition, the Yahwistic tradition started around the time of the Shasu people, when people of east of the Jordan came over, across the Jordan, and took over west of the Jordan. And this was further taken over when the Israelites took over the Philistine parts, as evident in 1 Samuel. Hey, thank you so much. Thank you. God bless you. So I was just discussing the ancient traditions that Israelites got their culture from, which is the language, the sacrificial system, as well as the circumcision. Those all, even according to the Bible, predate Moses. And so I believe that's what they're trying to tell you. But what I wanted to say about these gods from the root word these, so that when you talk about these in plural, it would talk about all these aforementioned gods, these known gods, and many scholars such as I can't even remember who right now, but in addition to two powers in theory, Heaven will tell you about the Helioistic traditions of the Ugaritic as well as Aloistic sources of the pantheon, and this is just how people were. They had these many gods because as a king would die and he found a city, he'd get put into the pantheon, and then you'd have too many to count after a while, especially with more ancient societies. And so when you have all these gods, if you read, oh, you in Ipsy? I just moved out of Ipsy. I used to live in Ipsy just last year. I was, like toward the end of last year, I lived out in College Heights by Eastern. I still work in Ipsy. I'm in Ipsy all the time. So I'll have to see you in Ipsy. Yeah, I'm finna head to Ipsy. But to make a long story short, when you talk about all these known gods that they inherited from time immemorial, that there's already established system. When you look at the Mishnahs or whatever, the tractics and everything, as well as the Muslim sources, they will tell you that Abraham And this is confirmed in Joshua 5, if you don't believe me. I think verse 28, that how Abraham had these many gods when he was coming up, right? And so, and that all of these other gods felt like Dagon to his god and what have you. But this system of many gods, these gods, is understood singularly in the way we understand the Trinity. The Trinity is not necessarily singular in the purest form. It's three persons. And so I believe that the Holy Spirit, through the New Testament authors, it was revealed something that had long been shrouded in mystery, how this God that can't be seen is appearing to people and stuff like that. So a lot of clarity is provided in the New Testament, but that this word Elohim, if you break it down, it literally means these, all of these. And all of these considered Elohim, I think there is a little bit of truth in like what people say in culture in the title. Like, I'm not trying, pardon me for being too ecumenical, and I don't necessarily assume that, if somebody says, may the universe bless you, or, oh, the universe did that they're necessarily talking about chakras or Vedas or anything else. And some even say Jesus went all the way to India. I don't know. And, you have like Manichaeism, which seems like a lot of, kind of, as well as Sikhism. You can see how these aren't necessarily mutually exclusive terms if one does look at further similarities and find something more peaceable. Though I do believe one should take a hard line for clarity, like Jesus took a hard line where he said salvation is of the Jewish, and so to properly understand where Jesus is coming from, that's why we have the Old Testament. We can go back and look at what certain things mean. But to wrap up, there's just that. If somebody says, that must be the universe, I don't need to get like super offended and say, no, you're talking about Krishna. My God is Yahweh. I mean, the New Testament, I don't believe once said Yahweh. I mean, they must have said Alleluia, and that might have been for a certain angle that John was going for, John the Revelator, in Revelation toward the end. But other than that, you don't really see Yahweh. They had plenty of time to say Yahweh in these many, many pages, and yet you don't find it. So I'm not saying that. I think Yahweh was the Yahwehistic tradition where they say God is one, meaning united, and that it's a God of, the blessings and curses maybe, but that's not my point. My point is that this particular God would be of the Yahwehistic tradition, not only one, but very nationalistic. Also, he would be the living God. That's what I was looking for. The living God, yes, because that's what Yahweh means, the one who is and was and will be. So, yes, so the living God, as we see with how they interpret the Mishnah and tractates for Abraham, that he was from the household of many gods, that there's only one God living and the rest are idols. So this was thanks to the Yahwehistic tradition, which may be where there was the end of child sacrifice. I don't know. But, there's, I owe a great deal of credit to that system for the good it has done. I'm not trying to say bad about it. So Yahweh would be like the living God, where Elohim would be like the universe. But the universe was understood as God, That's all I got. That's just a thought. And if you don't like it, then throw it out. Yes, the God of Israel, the Lord thy God. There is only one God, of course. Of course, there is only one God. But that I don't think if people didn't know the name for it, because if it was revealed to Moses, what about all the patriarchs? They didn't know the name of God, so just because they didn't know the name of God or have a perfect perception, I believe that the clear understanding of God didn't even come until the New Testament. I feel like there was a lot that was veiled and shrouded in mystery. So it's not that God changed, it's that people went through a lot of changes to understand God. And those changes began with pantheism, with sacrifice and circumcision and all that before Sinai. And it's just what it is. And they try to tell you that as a history, but people get it twisted. They try to retrofit the Torah back into before the Torah even existed and stuff like that. And so, yes, there is only one God, but that people didn't understand it until the revelation came. And that's what we have the book of Revelation as being the apocalypse, that everything becomes clear through the word, but the word is being over time revealed. It's when Moses first got it, it wasn't full, and what he got was more complete than what, let's say, Abraham got. And so over time, it becomes clearer and clearer what this revelation was until it became perfected in the Bible. So there is what you need to know in the Bible, but I think the mistake a lot of Hebrew roots people make is they just focus so much on the old that they try to make it mean something it didn't mean. That if God knows everything and he revealed it through his prophets, then we should have known. Well, he did reveal it through his prophets, but his prophets, some of them came later, like John the Baptist and stuff like that, and he was still under the old system. So if you try to discount that or get a formation of an idea, a schema, before you hear the whole story, the whole case, the whole truth, it's incomplete. So the complete revelation comes through the whole book, and you can't just stay in the beginning and get it all, because in the beginning they didn't get it at all. And that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much. I hope to see you soon. God bless. Love you. Bye.